Hello again. So what we'll do now is simply just launch SketchUp. So I have a version of SketchUp 2019 installed on my laptop, SketchUp Pro, a trial version. What you can do now is select the template that you want to use. It's good practice in the UK to use millimeters. So what we'll be doing is using this example over here. So once you click on that, you just need to give it a few seconds to just power up. As you can see here, we have a three-dimensional space with just a man over here, which is typical. Sometimes, depending on the different versions that you're using, some of these tools will be presented in a slightly different format, but every version will effectively use the exact same tools available here. This Lumion plugin over here, ignore this. You won't have this come up in your model if you haven't installed Lumion, in your software if you haven't installed Lumion yet. So I'll be talking about Lumion in a later tutorial, and I'll be using this plugin to showcase what that can do. So you can see here, as I mentioned, we have a three-dimensional space. You can rotate around the space by just holding on the mouse wheel and rotating around. You can zoom in and out by scrolling the mouse wheel, or if you hold down Shift and hold down your mouse wheel, you can move or pan around the space. To select something, you simply just click on it or drag and select, and if you need to delete it, you just press delete. At the top we have the basic toolbar. So we have the typical file, edit, view, camera drop-down menus that we will find in most 3D modeling software, but these are the basic tools that SketchUp uses. The basic tool is a line tool here, so you can see if you get closer to one of the axes, so this is the X, Y, and Z in SketchUp. If you get closer to it, you can see that our mouse clips into a point that's near that axis. As you can see here, we can clip to the origin 0, 0 point if we need. To draw a line, you simply just click on the start and then drag to wherever you want to draw the line to. You can also enter the distance by just clicking in, but typing in a distance. So if I want 20 meters, what I'll do is enter 20, 1, 2, 3, enter. Sorry, let's try that again. So 20, 1, 2, 3, enter. And you can see this number coming up on the lower right here. So if I want to enter a new distance, let's say 10 meters, I just simply put in 10, 1, 2, 3, and then enter. Let's try that again. So here, 10, 1, 2, 3, enter. And you can see here we've drawn a line on a different plane. So just as a hint, when you draw lines in, I'll just delete these for now. When you draw lines in SketchUp, if your line turns red, it means you're drawing a line parallel to the red axis. If your line turns blue, that means you're drawing a line parallel to the blue axis. And if your line turns green, that means you're drawing a line parallel to the green axis. The way SketchUp works is basically you create faces from a series of lines. So if I draw a line here, 3 lines like this, you can see that a surface has been created. Surfaces have directions, so the darker gray means that this is supposed to be the concealed or the back side of the surface, and this is the front side. So to switch that around, I can go and right click and reverse faces. When you're rendering, you always want to have this surface on the outside, because that's how the rendering engines usually interpret the surface. So I can go back again and just reverse that like this. This command here, you can draw rectangles, so I can draw rectangles as such in the XY plane, and if I need to draw rectangles in this direction, I can simply just do that. By clicking this drop down menu, I have different options here. So you can see I can create a rectangle by a rotation and a degree. So what I can do here is go on my axis, I can draw a line parallel to the red axis, and then, because this is one of the edges my rectangle, I can draw a rectangle at different degrees over here. You can see at the bottom right of my screen, it gives me a distance and an angle. So if I want to input a certain distance and an angle, let's say 10 meters. So 10, 1, 2, 3, space, millimeters, comma, 45 degrees, just 45, like such. Press enter. You can see that that has been drawn. And if I bring my pen tool, click over here, I can measure that and confirm that that's 10 meters, as you can see. I can also use this tape measure to measure different distances. So over here, you can see that's 10 meters. Just do that again without clicking. Another command to use is called a push or pull command, and this basically does what it says. It takes a surface and then you can extrude the surface. Again, you can give that a certain input over here if you wish, or you can just extrude it like that. At the moment, we can see that we have all the surfaces are white. That means our model is modeled correctly. However, if my outcome or my output is something like this, so if I just reverse this face, you can see that that should not be the case, and I should just go back and reverse this face like this. Arc command, so this is useful for drawing arcs. So what I need to do is select a start point, an end point, and then an arc radius, like this. And then I can also, you can see I can't use the pull command on a line, it'll have to be a surface, so I'll have to close this first. And then I can use the pull command to pull this up. I mentioned earlier in the video before this that SketchUp only deals with surfaces that are planar and doesn't really deal with curves. And if I zoom in here, you can see that this arc is made out of segments. So again, as I mentioned, because SketchUp uses the mesh modeling approach to modeling, I can use the styles display over here. So in case you can't see that, this goes on window, default tray, and then you can choose these things to bring up if you want. So I can go on the styles and I can change the style of my drawing or my viewport over here. So in this drop down menu you have the default styles, so you can play around with these and really explore them in your own time. Assorted style basically just gives us all the different styles that SketchUp has as default, right? So these are not ones that you need to use. It's just different ways of displaying the 3D model. You can have different color sets like this. These are your default styles, etc. Straight lines like this. And as you can see, some of these styles are useful for certain things, so some of them might be more useful for exporting for diagrams, whereas others are more useful for technical drawings, etc. You can see that. So if we just go back to the main style, and that's if you just go back into styles, in model, and go back into your architecture style, you can edit the style in the way that you wish. So if you go and edit edges, you can select these edges. As you can see, the outline remains outlined, but the edge, there's no line on the edge over here. You can also take the back edges if you want to get kind of this indication of the volumetric shape of the model or the models. You can go on the face settings over here. You can change the color of your front and face settings. So sometimes it won't be easy to pick up your back color, but if you have them in red like this, you can easily pick them up. Background, so this is just useful for you to hide or have a consistent background color. So you can choose your ground color, your sky color, or you can just turn this into white and have disable your sky and have just a plain white background, or a black background if you wish, or any other color if you wish. This is for watermarks, if you want to add any watermarks into your model, etc. And then if you go on the modeling settings over here, if you highlight this hidden geometry, you can see that our arc is made out of these facets, right? So as I mentioned earlier, SketchUp doesn't really work with curved surfaces and curved lines, but you can see here everything is split into individual faces. I'll turn that off for now. So these are the display settings in SketchUp. You can also use the shadow settings over here. So if you click on sun for shading, you can change the daytime like this, and you can see it affects your location. So you can change the different time over here as well if you want. Scenes, so this is a way of saving your camera settings. So if I add, if I press the add button over here, create scene, I can see that if I move around or rotate in any direction by double clicking here, I can always go back to that same angle. And this is really useful if I want to export a lot of different images, whether you know, to then overlay in my Photoshop collage or render. So it's very important to use scenes in your project. So we've covered styles, also layers. If I want to change the layer of a certain object, all I do is just select the object, right click, and change the layer in the entity info over here. So again, if you can't find these specific drop down panels, you can go on the Windows default tray and just click on them over here. As you can see here, this is now on layer 2 because that's where I moved it to. You can also hide them from here, Control Z, or I can go in here and then I can hide certain layers. So if I hide layer 0, if I hide layer 2, I can see that my geometry in layer 2 is now hidden. And now this helps me just to work on the layer that I want to. So some of the additional functions we can get out of SketchUp is if we draw a line here. Let me just draw a triangle for now. I can go here, I can scale up certain geometry, so I just click on them. This is scale it in the green axis direction. This is scale it in the red axis direction, or the X direction. And if it's a 3D object, I just click escape. And if I select on my 3D objects like here, I can also scale that in 3-dimensional in different ways. So I can scale it like this, or however I want. I can also input the specific scale that I want here. So if I want to scale this by 2 times, I just click on 2, type in 2, enter, and now that's scaled 2 times the size. So I can Control Z to undo. I can also rotate objects, so I can do that with any object here in SketchUp. So I just simply click and then rotate. Again, I can input the exact angle that I want to rotate it by, 90 degrees in this case, and then click enter, escape. I can also move objects, so I just hover over and have to move. And now this has shown us some of the SketchUp peculiarities. So basically, if any 2 lines touch in SketchUp, SketchUp will already think they are related, and then if you select one surface and move it around, it will affect your whole geometry. So to illustrate this, all I want to do is just draw a simple rectangle like this, and then extrude it like this. Now, with my selection tool, I can select a single face, I can select an edge, or I can select the whole volume. If I select the whole volume and move it, you can see it's moved entirely. If I select a face, because it has a relationship with the other faces, it will move that face, but will also move those points connected to that face from those edges, right? So Nothing is really kind of separate in SketchUp if they touch each other. The only case where this applies is where you have groups. So in this case, all I want to do is copy. So the way I copy is just hold down Control, and I can copy an object like this, click on Escape, and now if I go here and group my geometry like this, so right click, make into a group. Now if I move that geometry to the top over here, you would expect this to influence the bottom half of the box, but because it's in a group, SketchUp will understand that they are isolated and they should have no relation to each other. Now if I have done the same with this object, so if I select and then I move again, so hold down Control and move, Escape, and now if I select this, I want to move, SketchUp will again think they're related because the lines are touching each other and the objects are not grouped. So this way, this is very important to understand with SketchUp because this is one of the ways that really works in a different way when you compare it to other modeling software. So if you don't want anything influenced by any other geometries, make sure you group it. Otherwise, this will happen here, where if I just draw anything and link and has some overlap with my other geometry, it already influenced this. This will only affect if the edges are connected to each other, like here. So if I draw another rectangle like this, and then move this rectangle slightly up in the Z, and then move it here, you can see it's still intersecting with my surface, but if I move it back away, you can see it hasn't changed, and that's because SketchUp, despite it's reading this as one surface, which is made out of multiple surfaces, but you can see here it displays as one surface, it won't really assume that the two geometries are connected if the face interferes with the face, but if the edges interfere with edges, again, it'll think they're linked. So here you can see this is what's happening here because we have edges connected to edges. Okay, so I hope this is a good overview of the basics and the interface of SketchUp. What we'll do next is model an example, and we're going to be modeling Mies van der Rohe's Barcelona Pavilion in our next tutorial. See you in a bit.